Good morning. Welcome to Wednesday's daily devotions. So, I wanted to lean into the text today real quickly at a really specific part. We've been reading that the story of Jesus' resurrection appearance every day since this weekend. Um, I just want to read the first part. If you remember, we're at Luke 24, verse 36. Jesus appears to his disciples. He's got scars on his hands and he eats fish, and they think he's a ghost. But I wanted to just call attention to a couple things. Listen. While they were talking about Jesus being revealed in the breaking of the bread and appearing to the two on the road, Jesus himself stood among them and said to them, "Peace be with you." They were startled and terrified and thought that they were seeing a ghost. He said to them, "Why are you frightened? And why did doubts arise in your hearts? Look at my hands and my feet, see that it is I myself. Touch me and see, for a ghost does not have flesh and bones, as you see that I have." And when he had said this, he showed them his hands and his feet. While in their joy they were disbelieving and still wondering, he said to them, "Have you anything here to eat?" They gave him a piece of broiled fish, and he took it and ate in their presence. What I wanted to call attention to was this portion. Why are you frightened? And why did doubts arise in your hearts? It's the question, why? Why are you frightened? Why do doubts arise in our hearts? I guess that's what I've been thinking about this week and this past day. Why do doubts arise in our hearts, and why are we frightened? Jesus Christ has risen from the dead. Like, death's been conquered. And I'm asking that just as a meditation question today, because I think it's an important question. Why? Do we have doubts because we're expecting something different from God? Do doubts arise in our hearts because life's that hard? Because we've been let down? I think it's probably connected somehow to the scars that we have, either physically or even probably greater internally on our heart and on our soul. Why do doubts arise in your heart? I invite you to think about that today and ponder it a little bit, because for Christ, it's why did doubts arise in your heart? It's me. Look, I've risen from the dead. I've come back. You have nothing to fear. And I think doubt is this weird thing where we've been trained to think that it's a an opposite of faith. And I've said that before, and I've preached on that before, that I don't believe doubt's the opposite of faith. It's an integral part of it. It's not a either this or that. And you see that in the disciples today too. While in their joy they were disbelieving and still wondering. Well, what does that mean? How do we claim the joy of Jesus but still be disbelieving and still wondering? I think that's just our human condition, and when we end up in that space, what we really have left is the promise that Christ had a body, and that bodies matter, and his mattered and ours mattered, and we can just lean into that, because at the end of the day, we're inheriting this beautiful promise and this beautiful story from these people 2,000 years later, through history and tradition and speaking of the word weekly. I mean, that preachers have been giving that promise for 2,000 years so that we can remember it. While in their joy they were disbelieving and still wondering, and then he ate a piece of broiled fish. There's this continuity between our life, our suffering, our brokenness, finally our death, and then our resurrection as well. And I think it's interesting that even in Jesus' body, those scars don't go away. He still has them. He still comes and has to engage Peter and says, "Peace be with you." And I mean, Christ's scars were not just a sign of his crucifixion, they were a sign of the disciples' abandonment. They were a sign of the things that wounded his own heart, his tears and his grief, and how that led him to actually a deeper love for us, even though the people that loved him hurt him. And somehow I think what he's trying to show us is not that It's not that we have nothing to worry about or anything like that, but that there's a continuity between life and death and eternal life after, so that we're free to actually live in this world and claim our stories and our scars and our hurt. And maybe that resonates with you today, that you can see those things and acknowledge those things and understand that Christ is leading us through them and allowing them to shape and form us, even though it's incredibly hard. But He's paved the way for that and stands and says, "Why are you frightened? And why did doubts arise in your heart? It's me, I'm with you." I invite you to think about that today. Cling to the promise that Jesus Christ is risen and that He is risen indeed. And that makes all the difference for wholeness and life and love come to us through Him. And I hope you have a blessed day.